Hey, hey. Well, how are you feeling? So, I'm going to jump on here and completely without notes, no statistical data points, anything like that. I'm going to give you the one reason you don't fire Jason Kidd right now or this week if you're the Mavericks organization. Here's the one reason. Well, actually, before we get to that one reason, let me just share some thoughts. I have been a Dallas Mavericks fan, a diehard Dallas Mavericks fan since the late mid 80s, probably around like 87. And I was very, very little, maybe 87, 88, right around there. Little guy. And loved the Mavericks. So I lived through some of the early highs of the late 80s, that team being competitive in the playoffs. The Rowe, Aguirre, Tarpley, Donaldson, Davis, Harper, those fun, highly competitive, really talented Mavs teams of the 80s. And then I lived through the 11-win seasons, the 13-win seasons of the 1990s, where we were probably, we were competing with the Los Angeles Clippers for the most embarrassing franchise in all of professional sports. I remember thinking, man, we're worse than the Clippers because the Clippers have Loy Vaught, and that guy's legit. Loy Vaught. How many of y'all have ever heard the name Loy Vaught? Oh, gosh. Oh, man. I'm woozy. I'm kind of like punch drunk from this Mavericks loss tonight. So I want to admit right off the bat something. It doesn't happen very often. And I don't say that out of arrogance. I just said, maybe a touch of arrogance, but it didn't happen very often, but I am wrong, and I was wrong. I argued against people that Jason Kidd may have turned a new leaf. He may have really grown as a coach. I know he kind of burned his bridges and ran out of time in Milwaukee. I was like, man, yeah, that happened then, but he grew. He got to be a part of a championship squad on the LeBron AD Lakers, the bubble championship. He got to grow as an assistant coach, and now he's ready for another shot at the big chair, the big job, the big clipboard. Except in kids' instance, it's more like the big hands and pockets. And I was wrong, man. I was wrong. Not that it's always wrong to give someone another chance. I definitely believe in second chances. But man, I was wrong about Jason Kidd as a head coach. He does not have it. To be a great head coach, to be a championship level head coach, you have to be more than buddies with the players. You have to be more than a guy the players respect because you were a legend. And Kidd is an absolute legend. A lot of you are too young to really know. You've just seen the highlights. I'm telling you, the highlights are impressive, but the highlights don't show you how great Jason Kidd was in his prime. Man, Jason Kidd controlled basketball games. As a player who, for a big old chunk of his career, could not even shoot. He was an absolutely elite defensive player. Could guard 1s through 3 probably, and sometimes 4s because he got strong as he got older. But really could guard 1 through 3 at a high level, guard 1 through 2 at an elite level, shutdown level, and then was just the closest thing I've ever seen to like a basketball savant on the offensive end of the court. Just a complete maestro, right? I mean, if you're too young to have seen Jason Kidd, you definitely didn't see Stockton or Magic, but like, he just is that level of incredible point guard, especially when you consider the fact that the guy really couldn't shoot, didn't have much of a jump shot for a big old chunk of his career. He added the three-point shot a little later, and maybe in the second half of his career, he became a lethal set three-point shooter. But I think Jason Kidd is one more. He's just one more in a long line of living and passed on examples of a legend of the game who's not a great coach, at least not a great head coach. I've heard so many times from players who played with Bill Russell was their head coach, or, some other great legend was kind of a failed head coach. And the idea is They just want you to go out and do the thing. Like they could. Like, go out and dominate. Go out and play great man defense. Go out and be a heady, high IQ player. Go out and sink the clutch shots and don't get frazzled in crunch time and come through for your team and make the right pass and make the big bucket. And, like I did when I was playing, So often legends of the game fail at coaching because the guys they're coaching aren't them. They're not at their level. They're not great like them. They can't come through in those tough moments like them. They don't have that genius, preternatural level hoop IQ like they had. They don't have it. And I'm seeing that for Jason Kidd. And it's not a big shock. And I'm not like, it's not some grand revelation. I'm just ready to admit it now. The guy is not winning head coach material. He does not bring enough to the team. Being buddies and keeping the guys happy is not enough. You have to implement strategy. And your strategy has to adapt with the times. Your strategy has to adapt as other teams adapt to your initial strategy. There's just no audibles, right? There's no second and third actions off of the Mavs offense. I know there technically is, but not that they actually utilize. There's not enough variation going on in what the Mavs try to do offensively. And then, of course, where they really, really have just absolutely, colossally, and in a catastrophic way failed is on the defensive end. Jason Kidd was an elite defender, guys. You can go look up the highlights on YouTube. But I'm telling you, he was an absolute problem defensively. He was elite defensively. He could shut down your best guard. He would find a way to get his hand on every loose ball. He'd grab a ton of rebounds. I mean, he's just a problem. And his reputation, at least the one that I kept hearing about, was that he's a more defensive-minded coach. And yet he has failed so epically to instill any sort of defensive identity into this team. Unless you want to say the identity he's instilled has been catastrophically pathetic. So he has failed. I was wrong. I am ready to admit it. Some guys on Twitter X never admit when they're wrong. I don't want to be those guys. I was absolutely big wrong about Jason Kidd as a head coach. All right, let me wrap this up. This season is going absolutely nowhere. Do you have any confidence in this team being able to win a play-in game? No. Just 3 weeks ago, we were talking about this team maybe winning in the second round, Not now. Not now. This team has spiraled downward. And so here's the one reason, and I'm done. Here's the one reason you don't fire Jason Kidd right now. Because if you fire Jason Kidd right now and turn it over to the coaching staff, and maybe even in particular, you turn it over to Jared Dudley to be the kind of the rah-rah coach, to implement some new energy, some new ideas, some new concepts, some simplify the game. You ask someone to guard a freaking three-pointer in the corner, there would be a boost of energy. But the only reason you don't fire Jason Kidd and hire like Coach Bud, for example, is this one reason. And it's an obvious one, but here it is. If you feel like you can actually hire someone who's quality once the season's over, if you feel like in the offseason there will be a few real quality basketball coaches come available, that's the reason you don't fire Kidd and go hire someone like Bud. Now, that doesn't preclude the idea of firing Kidd and just, promoting one of the backup staff. That doesn't preclude you from promoting Dudley or Sweeney or the other guy. Those guys could still do that, and they could hire a legit head coach, an experienced head coach, a proven winner in the offseason. But the only reason you don't fire Kidd right now and hire, Coach Bud is because you think there's someone better going to be available. Nico puts his ear to the ground and he's going, I hear the rumbles that there are going to be 3 or 4 really quality coaches available in the offseason. So that's the reason you wouldn't fire Bud. If Bud's not your flavor, right, then maybe you hold on to Kidd through the season. I honestly, let me just speak my mind. I don't feel like you hold on to Kidd. I don't think holding on to Kidd brings anything positive at all, with one exception. If Nico or whoever the right person to do it is saddles up to Luka, and Luka is ardently, like passionately in defense of Kid, that's the one reason. That's the only reason. You know what it's like with the superstar. You kind of have to play their game. And if Luka is passionately committed to Jason Kidd being his coach, you are kind of screwed. But if Luka's willing to say, yeah, this is not working, and I see the only thing we can change is the head coach, if he's willing to go along, I would move on from Kidd right now, like ASAP. I would promote his backups, just to change the spirit in the locker room, just to give the team a boost, just to say this, we believe in you, and we do not believe that Coach Kidd's voice is being heard anymore. Some moron online was arguing with me because I said, hey, this is what happened with Carlisle. Carlisle was a genius X's and O's coach, but he lost the team. His voice was no longer impacting the team. They stopped hearing his message. I said, so they had to let him go. I remember that when Carlisle wasn't re-signed, when they let him go, because I don't think he was fired, right? He was just let go. His contract was up, I think. Not one player tweeted about him. Not one player tweeted, oh, we're going to miss Coach Rick. What an honor. Thank you for all the lessons you taught me. Not one player that I can remember. Almost none of the players for sure tweeted anything as far as like, we're going to miss our coach. He'd lost them. I don't know if Kidd has lost the players in the same way, like emotionally, like Rick had, but he has lost them in terms of his effectiveness being a coach. That they are not improving. They are regressing. Now that they're finally healthy, this is what we get from them. These pathetic efforts, this absolutely lackadaisical defense that's just completely looking lost out there. No, man, no. Kidd ain't it. Kidd has got to go. If you can, if there's any possibility, try to get some good sleep tonight.